Hello, and welcome to the show. This is just a short intro before we begin the episode, which I'm sure you will enjoy. We have a few things to share which are specials this weekend. If you're a writer and love the process and inspiration of writing on a classic typewriter, you can experience this magic opportunity by purchasing your very own typewriter. We do also have vintage or antique typewriters. Or if you already have a typewriter and it's broken, we are able to repair it so that your writing process can be that much more beautiful and enjoyable. Whether you're sitting at home at a cafe or traveling the world, you can now be motivated to write anywhere, anytime. Next, staying on the topic of writing. If you would like to purchase my phone book, they are now published and available. The Narcissist Recovery Guidebook, as well as the Grand Soul Awakening calendar collection of inner child poems on friendship and healing, as well as Divine Love Lessons, a poetic love story of returning back to your core self and a healing journey of understanding your higher power, which has a touch of synchronicity, numerology, ascension patterns, spiritual insights to soothe the consciousness and support the ego into pure, authentic soulhood. And it's a great gift for yourself or for a friend who appreciates the art of poetry. Next, you can order the personalized art painting, which is perfect for birthday gifts and holidays. And it's just a great opportunity to become creative and to inspire the younger generation or adults as well. And you can also decide which kind of art pieces, which can be seasonal or biblical or a Disney character. So it will be anything that inner child wants to find for. Next, tutoring is also available from grade school to middle school to high school to courses. We have both the math, reading, writing, essay help, resume help, college admissions, essay help, all kinds of tutoring. Last but not least, we have virtual ballet lessons and classes available for all ages and all levels. There are ballet bar workouts included, and all you need is just a little bit of space and a chair or something to hold on to. And this is going to be with accompanying classical orchestra music to bring a sense of levity and joy and just fun overall, while also strengthening the body and adding flexibility and grace to your daily posture. And I have a unique experience as I grew up performing at Lincoln Center with the New York City Ballet, with my Anna City Ballet, with Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, and also at Madison Square Garden. So this unique mix of artistic expression has inspired me to create a whole list of ballet choreography, ballet classes, and to inspire people to come along on the journey to awaken their appreciation and their gratitude for body movement and body positivity. And I'm excited to share this with everybody, and everybody is open to join. It's available for everybody. And we focus on creating elegant movement to the rhythm of the music, which makes you feel comfortable in your own space, at your own pace, and in your own skin. And this gives you an opportunity to enjoy the journey of imagination, beauty, integration, and through you, a sense of gratitude for yourself, for others, for music, and for movement. Classes are in session and all are. And if you would like to have me on as a guest on your podcast and would like to be a guest on my podcast, please do let me know. And I am also collecting new interviews with upcoming. And for information on any of the things that I have mentioned, if you would like to participate in, or to purchase, or to just join the community, please send me an email at growthandgracemindset@gmail.com. I put all of the logistics are on safe. Enjoy the show.
Welcome to the Growth, Grace, and Gratitude podcast, where we talk about all things mental health, wellness, healing, growth, entrepreneurship, business tips, and so much more. And today we will be talking a little bit about self help guidance, mental wellness, and cognitive behavioral therapy with our very special guest, Judy. She has 40 years of experience as a psychotherapist in private practice, mental health and corporate trainer, as well as a wellness conference speaker. She's the author of 11 mental health and self help books and two therapeutic card decks. And her website offers free worksheets and handouts. So, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your work. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, of course. And it's so amazing. You have written 11 mental health and self-help books. That's so inspiring. How how does one like progress from self-help from like the first book towards like the 11th book? What has changed in your, I guess, perception of self-help in the mental health world, if anything has changed?
Well, I sort of fell into publishing because I was a continuing ed speaker for other therapists. And it turned out this provider also started publishing. So they said, "Oh, would you write a book for us?" So nothing I ever thought of doing. So actually, the first book ended up being actually pretty good, even though I was a real novice at it. And it was actually a very best-selling book of that publisher for quite a while.
Wow.
Not anymore. We're talking about 18, 20 years ago. Um, so I basically have a similar message. I just got better at delivering it and have a lot more experience as time went on. And then, aside from my mental health publisher, other publishers such as New Harbinger, W. Norton, also asked for me to write a book. So there was kind of an evolution. Um, and this latest book that just was released recently, this past year, 110 CBT tips and tools, is kind of like a culmination of a lot that I've learned. It turned out to be a very big book. I'll show it to you over here. Pretty meaty.
Wow,
I
yes.
didn't realize it would. It's like a workbook. It's a self help book, and I didn't realize it would be as big because when you're at the computer, you don't realize like how many words it really is. And I just did, just a, each tip is maybe a few pages, but once you put the layout and the graphics, which they did at the publishers, it ended up being quite a meaty book. So I think this maybe is my last. I don't know. this is this is pretty complete right here. I don't know what else I would say.
That's fantastic. And for people who don't know or are just learning about, can you explain a little bit about what is CBT and what are some general CBT tips that you can offer our listeners so they can have a more of a happy and healthy, psychologically productive year?
Okay. Um, CBT stands for cognitive behavioral therapy. Cognitive means mind, behavior is behavior. Um, so basically, it is a very active approach. That's where the behavior comes in. A very active approach. There's worksheets, handouts, diaries, logs, visualizations, exercises in order to give you the life skills you need to have a happy life and a healthy and emotionally well life. And basically, the premise under CBT is that the quality of our thoughts determine the quality of our life. And if we are feeling, let's say, anxious or bad or whatever, we need to focus on the quality of our thoughts, and therefore we can change our thoughts so we can change our feelings and change our behaviors. So thoughts are very central, and a lot of people don't realize how important the quality and the healthiness of your thoughts are, because a lot of people who are struggling, let's say, with anxiety, depression, substance abuse, self-esteem, they suffer from a lot of irrational thoughts, and CBT teaches you step by step how to change those thoughts so that you can think in healthier ways so you can feel better.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's such an interesting topic, especially how many of our listeners are empaths and they are on this journey of self-discovery and taking back their power and awareness from all different kind of experiences and traumas. And it's so interesting how we have to kind of take a step back and bring priority to ourselves. And it's such a beautiful awareness to be able to actually think how we think, because so often we're so like busy, quote unquote, and that we don't even have the ability to think how we're thinking or what we're doing. So when we're actually told by like therapists and self-help mentors and authors to take a step back and to think about how we're thinking or what we're thinking, this really kind of puts into perspective maybe our toxic behavioral patterns or some kind of behavioral patterns that aren't aligned to how we want to be part of the world. So I think it's a really great way to find that like center and to rebalance and to regroup in a way.
Right. Because, if you identify your thoughts, that doesn't stop there. It's what you do with them. So you
Yes.
have to restructure them, reframe them. And CBT has a lot of different tools to do that. And I'll give you an example. So, one of the hallmarks of CBT is identifying cognitive distortions. Cognitive distortions is an unhealthy way of looking at things that promote a lot of negative effects such as depression and anxiety. So example of a cognitive distortion would be all or nothing thinking. I'll never get over this. Also in that sentence, never is like an all or nothing word. When you think in absolutes, you're usually doomed to a life of some misery. Another aspect of that phrase is I'll never get over it. You're fortune telling. Fortune telling is another cognitive distortion that you already think you can tell the future. Then you might say to yourself, oh, I'm just like a loser. That's labeling. That's another cognitive distortion. So, what CBT does is it helps you identify the types of distortions. And I actually, in my book, have like a cognitive diary, cognitive distortion logs, where you actually say the whatever you're thinking, and then what are the type of the distortions are there, and how to then reframe it to a healthier way.
Wow, that's fantastic. And it's a very humbling journey and process, because I feel like when we're constantly in this chaotic energy on a day-to-day basis, most of us don't even have the bandwidth to kind of like take a step back and like sit down and do it. So that you're offering in your book these kind of actionable steps, that's so inspiring, and that's so like it's also going to tune into our thoughts and how sometimes we pick up on these, like you mentioned, the all or nothing and the perfectionism mindset, and how so often we
Mhm.
are taught that perfectionism expectation. And in a way, when we're able to, I guess, sit down and write everything out, we'll be able to slowly but surely rewire or even like unlearn certain kind of behavioral patterns to help us be more kind to ourselves. Is that also like a big part of this process?
Right. But you don't have to, once it becomes second nature, you don't have to actually, sit down with a
Right,
worksheet, write it down or whatever. It becomes incorporated in your life.
right.
And if you have a negative thought while you're taking a walk or while you're in a meeting and you're afraid of speaking up, or you're really upset with a friend or a family member, you think right then, okay, what are my thoughts? And it will train you. Obviously, it helps if you have some baseline of work done so that it becomes more automatic in your everyday life. And the more you do it, the more you think that way, the more you can tease out not just your cognitive distortions, but even what is, for instance, a thought and a feeling. A lot of times people confuse them and they think, oh, I shouldn't feel that way. Well, you can't tell yourself not to be hungry. You can't tell yourself not to be anxious. You are, right? But you can focus on the thoughts that create the anxiety. And so if you say, I feel like you're criticizing me, that's actually not a feeling, that's a thought. The thought is you're criticizing me. The feeling is I feel bad about it or I feel insulted. But so often we confuse thoughts and feelings, we don't even have a handle on how to change our feelings and change our thoughts. So you need
Wow,
to
yeah.
first separate what's a thought and what's a feeling.
Yes, and it's so interesting because this sounds kind of like if people have experience with narcissism, so many times narcissists will tell you how you're feeling, or they'll tell you, oh no, you're feeling or you're thinking something that's not true, but that's their actual, true feeling. So it's very challenging and tricky to deal with narcissists who kind of like are trying to tell you how you feel or how you think. And especially people who are recovering from narcissism, they're gonna have to like put up stronger boundaries and to actually like rediscover how they are thinking and feeling without somebody kind of trying to manipulate that.
Right. I agree with that. The thing is that when people are narcissistic, it's not that they choose to be. People who are narcissistic usually have had a lot of pain themselves and they are emotionally blocked and they have not had the nurturing and the support to be healthier. In my 40 years plus of seeing people in practice or people just in general, I have not met one person who meant to be unhealthy. They think actually they're doing their best. And so it's also important to not expect people to give you what they don't have to give because it's like telling someone they should be 5'10" when they're 5'8". It's like, this is the way they are. Not that people can't change, but some people are kind of stuck and it's very hard for them to change because they might not, because of their own uh, backgrounds and reasons, they might not even realize that they're doing anything wrong. They think they're doing their best.
That's so true. And this whole journey of life, everybody is kind of getting their awareness in different levels. And a lot of empaths, they have this craving to kind of like bring everybody to their level and they want to rise together and learn together. But the challenging
Yeah,
part is
right.
actually learning that sometimes you can try to help people, but if there's no like leeway and there's no, like you mentioned, emotional blockage that it's not able to break through, that's the challenging part to kind of like be aware with that and know that you tried to do your part to help somebody and the rest is kind of their choice.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, that's another cognitive distortion are shooting on others. You
Right.
should be more like me. You should be this way. You should be that way. When you have shoulds, you become very judgmental. And that's also a cognitive distortion because shooting on what other people should be is going to make you feel like they're victim rather than a victor.
Wow, yeah, and it's interesting because so many people do have that should mentality when they just want to like build their community. They want to build
Yeah, you're
friendships,
right.
build bonds, and they should actually, if they're craving for that, they shouldn't judge themselves for craving that, but they should realize like, okay, I'm craving community and bonding and friendship, and if they're not open to my invitation, I have to take a step back and reassess and maybe go find friends and communities somewhere else where they are accepted. So that's also that's a big lesson also for empaths, I think.
Absolutely. I think that the word that kept on coming through in my mind when you were talking is forgiveness. Forgive people for not giving you what they don't have to give, and forgive them for not being maybe as healthy as you wish they would have been,
Wow, yeah.
and forgiving them for not seeing things the way you do.
That's so beautiful. Yes, forgiveness is such a deep experience and practice. And it's part of it is like that self-forgiveness also, which is so critical and hard sometimes for us to do when we are so judgmental sometimes and we do want to complete that perfectionism identity that we have of expectations. So yes, it's very true. This self-forgiveness, it's very healing, and then it naturally kind of cleanses you and helps you detach from those unhealthy toxic attachments, whether they are thoughts or people or things or places. So yes, for sure.
We're all works in progress. And a lot of times people have had a hard time in my personal practice when talking to different people. People have a hard time accepting that they didn't know then what they know now. And they beat themselves up for not knowing any better or not being able to do any better because of their own emotional stuff back then. And the most beautiful thing you can do to yourself is have self compassion and realize that your behaviors or the ways that you acted that you now regret were also expressing your own pain, and you needed to heal from that in order to act better. And self compassion is probably one of the cornerstones to happiness. A lot of times people think, it's like success and achievement and having, all the accoutrements or having, great kids or, getting married or whatever. All those things can be fine. But if you don't have self compassion, you're not going to generally be such a happy camper.
That's a fantastic tip, and I think self-compassion kind of brings into focus any kind of suppressed shame that people have, and that's also a big could be a big block towards having that mental health confidence and awareness because sometimes we don't even know we have shame until like we experience things in the outside world or when we kind of have like shyness or extreme shyness or some kind of insecurity or something we're trying to keep down. So yes, that self-compassion is huge. And I feel like sometimes people are even afraid to give themselves that self-compassion and kindness because they feel like they're loaded with shame. So that's an interesting kind
I
of
think you're right. I think a lot of times people think they don't deserve it, and they
right.
find ways of punishing themselves
Yes.
psychologically, and they don't even
Yes.
realize it because they don't feel like, I did this, therefore I don't deserve to be happy or I don't deserve to that. And we're not talking about a major, you know, criminal behavior. We're talking about things in your past that you know better now and you wish you would have done differently, But what has
Yes.
always astounded me is so many of my clients, they say that it brought them to where they were and they like who they are now. And so they, not that they wouldn't want to change things back then, but they realize that they've evolved into, it helped them evolve into who they are now.
That's
And the
amazing.
same thing goes with trauma. You know, I'm always amazed when people who have had trauma in different ways, and there's traumas comes in all shapes and sizes. Some are like criminal abuse, and some are just devastating losses. Um, we all experience some sort of trauma with losing people we love, for example, even if we don't have major traumas from our upbringing. But regardless of what the trauma is, people have found that if they become deeper instead of weaker, they actually feel that they are more of a whole person, more authentic. And I always would guide people to authenticity rather than perfection.
Yeah.
Try to be the best authentic person you can be rather than your ideal standard, which isn't necessarily you.
Exactly. Yes. That's so beautiful. Yes. And that authenticity part, it's like we're able to be authentic when we take accountability for ourselves and our past pains and our past feelings and everything. So it is a beautiful message to embrace authenticity. I think that's a really inspiring and empowering message for empath and for everybody to kind of like tune into that awareness, and that awareness of authenticity oftentimes connects us to our inner child and our kind of core joyful self. So do you have any advice for your own like teenage self about mental health and about self-compassion?
I think self-compassion and self-acceptance is very freeing because you're not trying to be like anyone else and you're not evaluating yourself through someone else's narrative. Maybe you were told you're not good enough. Maybe, you have had, some messages that there's something wrong with you. What self-compassion and self-acceptance does is it doesn't listen to that chattering in your head. Uh, it's called monkey mind, and your mind just keeps on going. And it helps you relax into yourself and not be judgmental. Judgmental, judgmentalness to yourself and others can be extremely, extremely toxic.
Yes, for sure.
So my teenage self, I would say, be passionate, be forgiving to yourself and others. Forgive others for not giving you what they don't have to give. I think of like when you go into a furniture store, you don't expect to buy milk. And so often people expect to get things from others, whether it's their family members or love interests or friends, that they just don't have. And I think that by letting go of expectations, now, obviously, you're going to have expectations that someone's not going to hurt you and abuse you. And, we have like those kind of, you know,
Standard, yes.
standard rights, but we're talking about in non-criminal, non-abusive situations to let go of the judgments that people should be more like you. I really shudder, and every once in a while I hear people say things with the shoulds, like, well, what you should have said was this. Oh my God. People have no clue how inappropriate that is.
Yes, and that kind of idea of like micromanaging, that's also kind of there's some kind of trauma there to have control, to micromanage, to kind of to see the end result how they see fit. So that could also be a very narcissistic kind of tendency.
You know, when I think of people who are narcissistic, uh, basically is people who can't see things from another point of view. It's
Yes.
all about them,
Yeah.
and they don't have a lot of empathy for others. Those are people who usually have had a lot of pain. So I think that when people talk about people who are narcissistic, it's like they're the bad guys. They're also the guys that are in a lot of pain too. They just maybe have not identified it. So forgiving them for having so much pain that they couldn't grow like a normal tree. Just think of a tree that grows and goes up to the sky, and then some trees get kind of crooked and they just went on a different path.
Yes.
And that also can help you let go of some of the hold that people who have narcissistic tendencies has on you
Yeah.
because life doesn't revolve around them, even if they think it
Right.
does.
Exactly, right. Yes. And when it comes to your teachings of self-help and mental wellness, does manifestation play a role in how it contributes to mental wellness?
You know what? I think I know manifestation is a very
Trendy.
key term, very trendy. What I don't like about manifestation, the whole concept personally, is that it kind of, unless I'm getting it wrong, but the examples that I have read about or heard about, it's almost like if you think positively enough, you'll get it and you'll make it happen. And I don't really go with that because it's not like I wasn't positive enough and, now I have this and I failed. So I think manifestation, it, to me, it doesn't mean that you necessarily get what you want, and you don't, you can't micromanage the universe. However, you can micromanage your reactions to the universe, and you can be resilient. And I focus on resilience a lot more than manifestation, because it's almost like wishful thinking that if I think positively enough, like I really want that. I heard in one of, a book on tape, but, you really want that parking space, you're going to get it. No, the world doesn't go that way, but you can be resilient and find a plan B. And resilience to me is much more important.
That's beautiful, yes. And if there's like one lesson from your current book that would be a great message for people who are maybe newbies to CBT or who are wanting to learn more, what do you think is one of the most impactful lessons from your book?
I think that a couple of things we talked about were very impactful, such as identifying cognitive distortions and unhealthy thought habits. I think that there's a few things that people can do in their everyday life that can help them. One is to use coping cards, which are either note cards or reminders that you have on the computer of boosting your self talk, such as, I am worthy and just the way I am. That would be an example of an affirmation. And put that on a coping card, or on a coping card, like let's say a note card or whatever. Just when you know that you get emotionally charged, let's say if you're going to be speaking up in a group and you're very shy and you're afraid of doing that, what is the worst thing that can happen? Write down what some possible cognitive distortions are, and then write some rational alternatives. So, actually giving yourself tools. I also love the metaphorical toolboxes that I talk about in all my books, every single one of my books. I think metaphors are very powerful. So, what I would have clients do, for instance, is have a stress toolkit and on the kitchen counter, and the kids and, their kids and them would, make it all up, is put things that are reminders of, like a eraser. It's okay to make mistakes. You put that in the little, bowl or whatever. Um, Elastic band. Sometimes you get stretched too much, but you don't want it to be too limp. You want to embrace stress and feel engaged and committed. Put that in there. Put a coin, and it reminds you that change is something to be embraced, not to be avoided. So I love metaphors that give you some clarity, especially when you need reminders. And I like those metaphors. That's another tool that I like.
Those are great.
Like
Those are
this.
great tips and tools, and they're very actionable. So it's like it's
Yeah.
very like tangible and physical. I feel like that would be very
Yeah.
great for yes, totally.
Yes. Yeah. And I know that, some of my clients had said it was so helpful for them to have it. And then their kids sometimes think, oh, this could be in the toolkit and this could be, and it could be, let's say someone is trying to recover from substances. It could be a substance recovery toolkit, of things to remind you, maybe a band-aid to remind you that this is the time for healing. um, a cotton swab, that we all need gentleness and kindness, as an example.
That's so
Give
great.
yourself
Yes.
a Hershey kiss, like a
Positive
kiss and a hug.
reinforcement. Yes.
Exactly. That, kindness rules, and you want to be kind to yourself and others.
That's amazing. And the inner child will love this opportunity to feel embraced and to be
Yeah.
given all this. Yes, exactly.
Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. What a beautiful conversation, Judith. Thank you for
Thank
coming
you.
on the podcast and sharing about your
You're welcome.
journey and your beautiful books that you authored. It's so inspiring. I'm sure our listeners are going to have a great opportunity to learn more about CBT and hopefully get a handle on those thoughts and emotions with a healthy, holistic way. And where can people connect with
Thank you.
you and see your content?
Well, they can go to my website, which is belmontwellness.com. They can go on my Amazon page. If you go on Amazon and then Judith Belmont, you'll see my Amazon page. So those are two good ways. And also LinkedIn is always good also. And it's just by my name.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.